Okay, this presentation does have a little bit more information, so I want to show you this. And this is about core programming concepts with Caliban. And by that, I mean the basic programming steps you'll use in almost every Caliban application you write. So what you're going to do is create schema types, or what I would call the domain model. And again, this will be your case classes and your enumerations. Here, I'm not showing annotations like I showed in one of the other slides, but you can add all those annotations in right here. And those annotations will give information to people who are calling and testing your API. But right now, I just have a case class named user, has these two fields, and then a case class named hosts, and it has the ID, the title, and then the author here. And when we come to the queries that I showed in a previous slide, in this case, I'm saying I'll allow you to query for a list of users, and that will give you the list of users, again, wrapped inside of ZIO. We can do user by ID, as I showed previously. And I was thinking I had a mistake in the previous slide, and I think I do. This one looks a little bit more correct for what I was thinking. So there may have been a mistake in the previous slide, and I apologize for that. I think this one is more correct because the code I was showing was for an option of a user. But either way, we have that query, and now we have a third query, and this one will be for all the posts, and that will return a list of posts. And I should say that I just mocked this up. So in the real world, you probably want to have a parameter here. That would be the user ID, and then it would be something like user ID transforms into this right here. So recall, anytime you see this transformation symbol in a data type like this is actually saying that we're going to define a function that transforms an integer into the ZIO type over here. So what I'm trying to say is that I just mocked this up, and this one should probably also be a function, and it should transform a user ID into a list of posts for that user ID. Oh, and another thing that's really important is that in the real world, where you see these any values right here, those are probably going to be a service. So you probably have something like a user service and a post service. In these areas where you see the any's right there, those will probably be service implementations. So again, these are just slides. We're going to look at real world code in a little while. So these were queries. And then on the next slide, you can also have mutations. So here I define a case class called user input, and it has this parameter named name, which is a string type. So the way I'm going to use this, and again, on this previous slide, we had queries, which is getting information from the server. And these are mutations. So the first mutation I'm going to allow is to create a user. So given a user input, I will transform that into a ZIO value. And again, you'll have the success case of a user right here. I'll also say that another mutation you can have is to delete a user. So given a user ID right here, I will transform that into a Boolean value that indicates whether that succeeded or not, wrapped in a ZIO right there. So hopefully that's very clear that queries are getting information, and mutations are queries that change data on the server side. So this is the third step, or an optional step. So I should go back here and say I'm actually doing this in order, where the first step you'll probably want to be doing is creating these schema types like that. The second step is going to be creating queries like you've seen right here. A third step that I note here that's optional is creating mutations, like creating users and deleting users, if you want people to change the data on your server side. Then the fourth step is going to be implementing resolvers. So here I have some sample data for our application right there. And then what we'd be doing is creating a list of queries, just like I showed in the previous slide. So this is an actual implementation of these queries here, the users, user by ID, and posts. This is the case class queries right here. And then when we come back over here, this is the user's query. This is the user by ID. And then this is the post query right there. So that's an implementation of queries. And then as we come over here, I think did I already... Okay, in this case, I did not create an implementation of the mutations. So just assume that I did. And once you implement those mutations, the biggest difference between this code and the previous code I showed is that now inside of the root resolver, you have both queries and mutations. So again, we wrap the root resolver with GraphQL. That creates our API variable, as you saw before. And then in the sixth step, we expose that API through the ZIO HTTP server. And again, we do just what we did before. We create an object with some name. We extend ZIO app default. For the run value here, we say that we want to start with our API variable. We want to run a server. And then we have this information, which I believe is the same as what I showed previously. And in all of this and all of these previous slides, I should note that we're writing Scala and ZIO code and Caliban code as we go through here and here and here as well. This is all Caliban code right here. And this is Caliban code too. And then finally, when we come here, we're saying, I want to take this API variable that we created right here, that GraphQL one, and now I want to run that with ZIO HTTP. That's what this is doing right here. It's saying I'm ready to run my Caliban application using ZIO HTTP, and then you put your other parameters in here, here, and here right there. So this is the way you expose your Caliban application via the ZIO HTTP server. And then as a quick summary, the basic flow when writing a Caliban application is what I just showed. You define your types, your case classes, and your enumerations. You create your queries. You create your mutations. And again, those are optional. You implement the resolvers. You create the root resolver. And then you expose your Caliban application via ZIO HTTP, as I showed right there.